I was singing almost every weekend on the telecast. On one Sunday, as usual, I went to church, probably sang a solo that day, I don't remember.
Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. In my heart, in my heart.
But I remember that the speaker was a fellow named Jim Smoke, and Jim was in charge of the singles ministry at the church, and he was speaking on the subject of relationships. I had gone to church that day hurting because I had come to the understanding and realization that life at home was not what it ought to be. And I certainly was taking responsibility for a portion of that, not all of it, but a portion of it, yes. And in the middle of this message that I really wasn't paying that much attention to, I was just going through my Sunday routines of singing and going to church. But out of this message in the middle, he popped a phrase that it was catalytic in my life. He said, "Change comes about when pain is greater than fear." When I heard the statement, "Change comes about when pain is greater than fear," that pierced my heart. That brought me to the understanding that I needed to make a decision for Christ, something that had been available for all these years, but that I had never made that choice. And I left the platform where I had been standing and part of the church service, came down the stairs and went into the men's room, locked the door. I was wearing my choir robe, and I got on my knees and simply said, "Lord Jesus, I need you. I'm making a mess out of my life. I realize that I am a sinner, and I recognize that you sent your Son to die for my sins, and I accept that invitation. Please enter my life and guide me to the best of my knowledge so that I can follow you for the rest of my life." Now, this is after 39 years of going to church and hearing about becoming a Christian, but going to church doesn't make me a Christian any more than sleeping in a garage makes me a car. And so I made that choice that day, and things within a matter of a few days began to, I had a sense of really being impacted. And I felt as though I was being spoken to by God to take the gifts that He had given to me, not just the music gifts, but to take my life and my skills and to use them to serve Him, but also to serve others. And I really felt as though that this was not an audible, but a voice, a direction from God. In my spirit, I sensed that. And so I remember feeling as though I wanted to do that. My primary gift was music, singing, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And I remember going to my principal at the school, Dale Schroeder, and telling him that I'd like to take a year's leave of absence. It was a few months later when I made an intentional declaration to not allow my credentials to stay alive. I intentionally let them lapse, and it was a statement to myself that I'm here to stay. I'm here to continue to be in ministry. I really felt as though this is where I should be. So I did that. For the first several months of ministry and traveling, I was really just feeling my way around and trying to understand how to do what I would do through my singing and sharing. There was not a great deal of sharing. I didn't feel as though I had much to share because I'm a whippersnapper. And I was not having trouble getting invitations because, you see, at the church, there was an organization called the Institute for Successful Church Leadership that would have these big conferences 4 times a year. And because I was a significant person on campus as far as the ministry was concerned and the television, I was part of those programs. And there'd be 300 to 400 pastors from churches all over the country every 3 months. And so during these 4 days of conference, they would get to know me as a singer, but also as a worship leader. And in following up to them and saying, God's got me in this ministry, and if you feel as though we could be of value in your church community, please call. Be happy to do that. We do not charge. We would go out on an offering basis, whatever your church would do to support us, that would be good. I intentionally said, I don't want to put fee on ministry. God should be in charge of my financial life too. And so he's in charge, and there would be some times when we'd come out with some pretty skinny offerings. There'd be other times where there would be surprisingly large offerings. I drove the van. I had a Shure Vocal Master system with 4 or 5 foot high column speakers and a big amplifier with 6 channels, I think, and a cassette player. And I would come into the church. I would carry all the stuff in myself. I would carry all my record products in myself. And we would set up a table, like a card table size, on the platform where I would stand next to it. And I had 1 song per cassette for tracks. And I would sing live to these recordings. I'd have them all cued, and I'd push the go button, and the track would come on, and I'd sing, and I'd eject it, and I'd put the other cassette in, and I'd push the button and go, and I'd sing, and that's what I was doing.
It's as though I already know you from somewhere down the line. 'Cause any friend of the Father is a good friend of mine.
And after the service, I would leave the sound system up, and I'd go out into the lobby and be there at the product table and sell product and talk with people and sign autographs and do all that kind of stuff. And then when they were gone, I'd go back in and I'd tear down the sound system and carry it back out into the van and go to the next place and start all over again.
Sharing is something that isn't always easy for me to do, especially if it's honest sharing. If it's intimate, it can be difficult.
And so I developed a technique that for me I thought worked. When I would come to a new church, if it was a concert situation, I would intentionally sing 1 or 2 short up-tempo tunes. They might be familiar to them. And then I would stop, and in essence I would say, hi, I'm Fred Frank. I was born and raised in Anaheim. I'm the second of 4 boys. My mom and dad had encouraged us to go to church, and I learned a lot about church, but I never became a Christian until I was 39 years old. And I would talk about something that was real in my life right now that displayed vulnerability. And here was my mode of operation. Until that person believes that I'm real, he's a spectator. How can I help pull him, prompt him to stop being a spectator? Because that's when genuine ministry will take place. Otherwise, he's examining.
And I came to a simple decision that I needed more than just me in my life, and I simply asked Jesus to come into my heart, to come into my life, to come into my attitude. Because when he comes into my attitude, it changes me. Now, you've heard this before. I'm not saying anything new, but you know what's interesting? Sometimes the Lord will take something that you've heard many, many, many times, and then finally it's like, aha, I got it.
I would share something. I might say, you know, I'm going to tell you something about me that some of you will ruffle your feathers, and I know that. And I'm not here to ruffle your feathers, but I want you to know that the pain that came into my life that brought me to Christ was divorce. Is that right? No. I was taught that's wrong. That's not what I like. It's not what I think should happen in a life, but it happened to me. However, it brought me to Christ too.
And now I can sing with pride in my song. I'm singing of things that were there all along. I'm feeling the strength that was given to me. For Jesus was there all the time. Jesus was there all the time.